welcome everyone to Racket News. We're going to be talking about Jeffrey Epstein and the 2008 financial crisis and using his knowledge or lack thereof about the most massive story related to the financial services sector in modern history as a way to inform us about this unrolling story. So I am joined with Eric Salzman. You know him, you love him. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. Do you want to, for the uninitiated, sort of explain a little bit about your background and your history with Matt?
Sure. So I've been I had a typical Wall Street career. And I was a mortgage-backed securities guy, and everything was kind of right good until about 2008, and when everything blew up. So that's when I made the brilliant career decision to get out of the finance business and write a blog. Uh, so I was writing a blog, and it was really just kind of as everything was unfolding, I was kind of writing it. Write it in kind of I think, a humorous way. And one day I got a call from a young, intrepid reporter, Matt Taibbi. And yeah, I mean, I think I explained to him what a credit default swap was like once. And I spent maybe 15 minutes with him. And I'll never forget, that was when his first article came out. It was called The Great Bubble Machine. And I remember reading it and just like laughing my ass off, but also like, oh my God, this guy got it. Like he whatever we all told him, he picked it up, he got it, he runs with it now, and he's hilarious. And so yeah, so Matt and I, just yeah, good, nice relationship. So it's good to be working with him again.
That's great. And you know your stuff. You saw the, you know, unrolling crisis firsthand, right? You were in
I was at
mortgages.
Credit Suisse. Yeah, I was at Credit Suisse, up close and personal. I really didn't deal with the subprime stuff though. I was more like they call it agency mortgage-backed securities, Freddie, Fannie, Ginnie. So I really didn't get involved in that, but it was kind of all around me. So I got to watch the whole thing kind of go up in flames. And unfortunately, I went up with it.
Well, I am so grateful that we get to use our in-house expertise to assess this video. This is an interview between Steve Bannon, um, former, political strategist for President Trump, still enormously influential in the MAGA movement, and Jeffrey Epstein, where he is asking questions about Epstein's experience of 2007 and 2008. And the story that we've been told about Epstein is that he is this brilliant financial whiz. And spoiler alert, Eric, that was not your impression.
No, I was pretty psyched up to watch it and listen to it because I had listened to Steve Bannon before, and I've listened to him specifically talk about the crisis and then the aftermath. And he knows his stuff. He's a sharp guy, and he really knew his stuff. I didn't expect Epstein to be Michael Milken, but just given the fact that he was in the middle of so many things, and it seems like always needed his counsel and advice. I was expecting Milk and Light maybe, and we didn't get that.
Yeah. What did we get? We got like third grader.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody by saying who he might have been, but he clearly was just a bullshitter. And I guess the one thing I could think about is the old "in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king," and maybe that's him. And you'll see when we watch this the contempt he has for everyone around him, as far as no one knows anything, right up from politicians don't know anything, government doesn't know anything. So maybe the fact that he knew a few buzzwords and was a great talker, but maybe that's how he got it done. But it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of my take on the Epstein story generally. And Matt's made no secret that we sort of, see the newsworthiness of the Epstein story differently. But I do think it's an interesting mirror into the dark center of so many of our most prestigious institutions. The fact that this con man, this sleazy con man, was able to brush shoulders with the people that he was able to. So I think without further ado, let's roll the clip.
Santa Fe Institute.
Why, when you're at the top of your game on Wall Street, do you decide to finance, which was at the time, or endow, or become the donor or sponsor, however you want to say it, for what was considered the most cutting edge group of mathematicians in the world? Actually,
So Santa Fe Institute in the late 80s, early 90s. I was interested, I was on the board of Rockefeller. So that starts, Rockefeller University, formed by John D. Rockefeller to sort of give back to the community, east side of Manhattan, except it was old. It was sort of old fashioned. They were talking about medicine, and medicine by itself was again subject to the ideas of science. They were trying to use science to find cures for disease. And I said, no,
it's a
we need
novel idea.
something different. We need to start.
Yeah, that's typically how it works, using science to, inform medicine. That's usually the process. I don't know what other process he would use, frankly.
And by the way, here I'm still thinking he's a math whiz.
Yeah. Yeah. Like maybe not great on the humanities, but he's got the numbers down. But
Right,
yeah.
right.
Interdisciplinary work. In most,
How did a schmuck like you get on the board of Rockefeller? What year was that?
I don't remember, late, I think 89 or 91.
So that's one of the most prestigious research places in the world, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did a guy like you get on the board of a blue blood, internationally known, hard research, Nobel Prize winners all over the place? How do they pick a guy like you, a trader from, or basically some guy from Bear Stearns?
Good question. So I was asked to be on the board of Rockefeller, and I think I was on the board of Rockefeller. There was a money manager who said Rockefeller needs someone with financial expertise because the university is growing and there's lots of new things. You have to, again, we go back to the original discussion the last time. Up until the mid 80s or sort of mid 70s, the most important thing was your name. If you were Rockefeller, you already were considered to be brilliant. If you were head of General Motors, it was your reputation. It was who you knew, who your family was, what was your character. And then in the mid 70s, basically, if you remember, you probably had a calculator. It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street.
Okay, so that's a little silly, but I'm still thinking here because there was an interview that not an interview. It was a piece on him, I think, in the New Yorker in 2002. It was called like the Mystery Money Man or something like that. It was a thing about Epstein and Jimmy Kane, who at the time, I think Jimmy was the president of Bear Stearns. I don't think he was. I think Ace Greenberg was still the CEO. And Jimmy Kane is describing Jeffrey, and he said that Jeffrey, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing, but he said that Jeffrey essentially knew what Black-Scholes was, which is a complicated. It's basically the formula for pricing equity options, which you have to have a good math background. You don't have to be Albert Einstein, but you need a good math background. So I'm thinking here when he says the calculator, okay, he's talking about potentially the first use of kind of higher math concepts on Wall Street coming in the late 70s and the early 80s. So I'm still on board with him being a financial genius.
Yeah. For me, my first impression would be like, I didn't know that I could be on the Trilateral Commission because I had a, T98 or T18 or whatever it is in like middle school calculus. But you were giving him the benefit of the doubt. So
Yes. At this point, yes.
Almost like your accountant. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. So it's not only mathematics, but it's things that could be calculated.
Things
Reputation couldn't be calculated. I could give you, are you a 10 on a reputation scale, an 8? What does it mean to have a measurement of your reputation? We'll get to that later. But places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board? Potentially sit on the finance committee. Nancy Kissinger and a bunch of other people. And David Rockefeller and I got along very well. He was this unbelievable human being.
How did that happen?
Right. I mean,
I mean, you're talking about one of the most powerful guys on the planet, and Jeffrey's about, what, 30, late 20s, early 30s, and he's friends with David Rockefeller. It's amazing. And again, I think we were speaking about it offline, but we're talking about how he had this ability, this incredible ability to be able to form these relationships with very powerful, wealthy men that were like decades, decades senior to him. And it's incredible how he was able to do this. This is all real. He could be bullshitting a lot about finance, but this part about these relationships is obviously very real. I just don't quite get it. But
yeah, that's kind of the question, right?
right, why?
So,
Respectful to everyone. He introduced his driver as his colleague, not his driver. He would never say, "This is my driver." He said, "It's my colleague." And David started to explain to me world politics. So David would say, "Jeffrey, money is going to be sort of the most important things. People don't understand money. You seem to have this knack for money." I said to David, "Tell me about your life. What was the worst and the best part of your life?" So David said, "When I grew up, everyone knew I was a Rockefeller. They didn't know that my father told me he would not leave me a dime, no money. But every time we went out to eat, me and my 5 friends in school, they would leave me the bill. They would expect me to pick up the check because I was a Rockefeller." And he said, "I was chairman of Chase Bank." And he said, "I remember like it was yesterday, one of the headlines in Time magazine said, 'David, please fire yourself.'" So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean?
As opposed to
He
what?
formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was some of the people that the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this trilateral.
Playing right into the narrative, right? The narrative of there's a secret cabal that controls the planet.
yeah, we just, marked our territory as being persnickety about facts and not wanting to go down any, wacky rabbit holes. But I think if my early biography was like a conspiracy theory Mad Libs in the way that Epstein's is, I wouldn't play into it so much. I wouldn't be like, people say it's this spooky thing. Really, we're just calling for, global governance that is permanent and unelected. That's all we're calling for.
Right.
But anyway, we're here to assess his, financial prowess and not his thoughts on global government. So
Of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. So he said to me, "Would you like to be on the Trilateral Commission?" Now, I was 30 years old, 32 years old. I said, "Great." And he said, "Well, you have to fill out this application so they have your bio." And I looked at the list of people, and it was Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, Paul Volcker, every great leader in America, the Asians, the Japanese, and with a very long description of their history. And they asked me to fill in what I would like to have written. And I wrote Jeffrey Epstein, comma, just a good kid, which I thought was funny. Nobody else did.
which is not true.
So answer your question.
Not a good kid, as it turns out. This, to your earlier point, Eric. Some of this biography is like corroborated, but some of this might be made up. As we'll see later, he conjures these fictional memories. So I think all of this should be taken with a big grain of salt, but it is, he can't
It-
seem to answer a question about how he ended up in these places if he was there.
Right.
Yeah.
At that time, I recognized around the world that monies and currencies were not really well understood. But again, it was only numbers. So numbers, and I'll get to the fact that it was bad thinking. It's numbers are very good.
Are most people that you meet, even on Trilateral Commission, when you meet most people, do you find most leaders financially illiterate, economically illiterate?
Most political leaders don't come out of a background of finance. Most political leaders come out of a background of being popular. So it's in some of the countries, in some of the African countries, for example, they might have been a military person. They were a general.
So
Some of the African countries.
one thing that our producer Greg caught is that he describes Clinton as being a former president, but he's describing the early 90s.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Because if he was born in 53, so it's probably the early 1980s that he got on the Trilateral Commission. If that's true, I did look it up. I think Clinton was on the Trilateral Commission before I think when he was still a governor of Arkansas. I think.
Okay.
Because I caught that immediately, and I thought, oh, hey, this is BS. But I thought he was thinking back to, okay, like Bill Clinton ended up being on there thinking about it, because I'm assuming he stayed on the Trilateral Commission until he went to jail.
Yeah, it could be more of a garbled memory than a totally fictional one.
He has those.
Yeah.
Because they might have been a disc jockey, or in our country, they would have been an actor. The knowledge of money they don't have expertise. They have no degrees in finance. They really, and this is one of the major problems. Their expertise, if they have any financial knowledge, is of their own checking account or bank account and filling in their own taxes. So many world leaders who don't really have a financial underpinning make fundamental errors when it comes to money on a country or institutional level. Let me give you an example. If you, Mr. Bannon, if I said your assets increased last year, you'd say, that sounds pretty good. And I said, what does that mean to you? You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say, yes. And if your debt increased, would you feel wealthier or poorer? You'd say, well, I don't want to have increased debt. I don't like the idea of that sound, increased debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. However, institutions like banks, things that people don't really understand are financial underpinnings of banks. When I say your bank, Mr. Bannon, you have the Bannon Bank, you doubled your assets. Sounds good, but what does it really mean? It means people owe you more money. You don't have any more money. What? Yeah. A bank's assets are how much it is owed by other people. That's crazy. So if the bank goes from $2 billion of assets to $10 billion, it means people owe it an additional $8 billion, but their assets have gone up.
So-called loans.
So the terminology of assets and liabilities is different for banks. It's not natural. And what most people, and you ask questions about world leaders, there's many people, I think your old boss Mercer understood, there's a fundamental part of money.
Robert Mercer, head of Rentec, investor in Breitbart.
Which is called fractionalized banking.
Oops.
And fractionalized banking is something that finance people understand, and the people on the street, and when I say people on the street, that's where I was when I started on Wall Street, would find it impossible to believe. Impossible. Why? Bannon Bank, I give you $1, just one single dollar. In our system of banking, I would say, okay, Steve, I gave you $1. How much can you lend out to your friends? And the natural reaction would be probably something less than $1 because I want to keep something in my pocket. The way our system works is if you as a bank are holding my dollar, you can lend out an additional $8 or $9.
All right, this is when it all started coming down for me as he's heading into La La Land. So what he's trying to describe is fractional reserve banking, which is that if a bank gets $100, it generally will want to hold something back in reserve, either where it's regulatory or because it makes good common sense. So maybe out of the $100, they'll lend 90 and hold $10 back. That's fractional. That's fractional reserve banking. What he's describing, and you'll see here as he goes on to that a bank could somehow take in $1 and lend out 9, is something different. I'll explain that in a second. Let him go on.
It's impossible. I only have $1, Jeffrey. We have something called fractionalized reserves, which is if you have 1, you can lend out 9. That's the way our system works. And so not only do world leaders not understand banking.
So what he's saying here, this is the other, they teach you when you start studying this stuff, they teach you fractional reserve banking. But they also teach you what's called the money multiplier effect. And he's conflating the two in that a bank lends out that $90 that we talked about. Let's say I lend it to your business, Emily, and then you're not going to spend all that money right away. I'm going to send it to your bank. Now that bank just got $90, right? It can then lend out 90% of that $9 and on it goes. That's the multiplier effect. So he's kind of conflating the two, which kind of shows he doesn't really understand.
Yeah, and it's a little strange to begin with that in response to these more sophisticated questions you would expect to have a more sophisticated answer, he, ventures a explanation of like a finance 101 concept to begin with, and then to get it wrong, get it, totally inverted is...
Right. He could have given us an example of how a world leader did screw up the economy and what mistakes they made, but, he doesn't seem to have that knowledge.
And on the street, my father worked in the park department. It would be beyond his imagination that people could lend out more money than they actually had in their pocket. Next question.
Well, how did this in understanding that when you get on something like the Trilateral Commission, you're on the board of Rockefeller, which is the most advanced research. You get brought into the Trilateral, which is the elite of the elite. How, since you're only at that time
30-something years old,
8 years from teaching at Dalton, right? You're adult.
10 years.
10 years teaching at Dalton.
Yes.
Walk us through. Put us in the room. Walk me through exactly what it felt like. What it felt like being on the board at Rockefeller. We got these Nobel laureates, and you're sitting there making decisions, and you start to meet these people at Rockefeller. You start to meet these people at the Trilateral Commission. What did it feel like?
It's a great question. So what did it feel like?
I'm in the business of asking.
What did it feel like meeting some of these people like Kissinger or Rockefeller? And those are two extraordinary people. But in general, I think the question, the people on Wall Street, I tell the story, one of the first days when I was in Wall Street, someone said to me, would you like to buy ATV? And I was looking in the brochure and I couldn't figure out what stock had a symbol of ATV. And when I finally said, well, I can't find it. And they said, what's the matter with you? Do you want to buy ATV? Which is, he was selling hot televisions, stolen televisions for the American stock.
The question was what? What was it like to be among these titans of finance? And he's talking about hawk TVs.
Stock exchange, referred to in common parlance is the televisions fell off the truck. So I knew what that phrase meant from Coney Island. But what I found was most people, what be it in business, in normal life, or in the world leaders, don't really understand money. It is something they think about. They have a sense of what it is. They certainly want more of it. But they also make statements like, we want more money, but we don't want more debt, which just shows a misunderstanding of what money at its core really is. So most people don't, they want to make it, they want to save it, but to understand it intimately is not a normal.
Just give me approximate. You joined the Trilateral
I
Commission.
think it might be,
And we'll be able to show we'll pull down the chart of where your name was, but just give me roughly when it was.
I think it could be 90. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's say early 90s.
Yes.
When you got on the Trilateral Commission and had do you remember where the first meeting was?
It was in Tokyo.
In Tokyo. And at what hotel?
I would like to say the Hilton, but it's probably not.
And it's a 3-day, 4-day? Give me some
3-day event, and
walk me through the whole thing.
Speeches.
It starts with a dinner. Just walk me through it.
It was boring.
You couldn't possibly think it was boring. It's
It
bullshit.
was boring.
You had to be
So-
stars in your eyes.
No.
Did you fly over privately?
Yes, but it wasn't my plane.
How could that be
So it
boring?
didn't count.
No.
You fly over,
Yes.
and
And it was
who were the first? Like when you first met those leaders, you had to be wowed.
No.
You're 10 years out of Coney Island.
No, I'm not wowed by people of position. I'm wowed by people of great ideas. And I don't care if it's the bus driver. I don't care if it's the student I had who has teeth coming out.
Well, these guys have to have great ideas. They're the leaders of the 3 great continents of the world: North America, Europe, and Japan.
No, many of these world leaders become world leaders because they're popular and they were able to get votes, or they were able to convince people to vote with them. I learned
Smart
later.
world leaders, right? He's basically describing the Trilateral Commission as businessmen, as bankers, as Paul Volcker's on the Trilateral Commission when he's there, and
Yeah, it's so confusing, but he's being asked to sort of give one interesting intellectual observation about brushing shoulders with these enormously influential people, and he can't do it. So he's talking about students with weird teeth, which just reminds me of the weird dentist office, and I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
yeah.
Many of them were just good at what they did in terms of politics. Remember, world leaders are politicians in general. They're not scientists. They're not intellectuals. They're not great thinkers. They're great politicians.
He had such
At the first Trilateral Commission meeting that you remember in Tokyo, in sometime in the early 90s, do you remember what were the big issues of the day that they were talking about, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because they were talking about inflation, and they were worried that what would happen. How do you control inflation? And as a mathematician, I didn't understand the concept. I don't understand the concept today. How's that possible? Well, when you talk about most things to do with money, money is meant to be local. It's US dollars. Then I understand what it means. If inflation, it means my dollar today inflates and it doesn't buy as much as it did a couple of years ago. The prices go up. It seems that everything is great, but in fact, my dollar is shrinking in value.
And you're the financial.
That's an okay explanation of inflation, right? We should give him credit where credit is due. He did okay.
He got it. He answered maybe a 6th grade question. Good.
Yeah, C+, Jeff.
But he had the dollar inflating thing.
Right, which makes no sense. But maybe he was like, yeah, this is a confusing term because the dollar itself is not inflating. I don't know.
Right.
We'll give him that one. We'll throw him a bone.
Give him that one. Yeah, C+.
I'm just a lowly M&A guy.
If you let me finish the thought,
Go ahead.
So if you're in America, you can feel inflation. Your salary's gone up, but you can't buy the same car. In fact, it starts to feel weird because the value.
That's why I wanted to ask the question. This is my point.
Sure.
The people who live and breathe this, the central banks, have been haunted by the specter of inflation since the late 70s.
Yes.
First off, tell our audience, how did that happen? The two great financial events in the 20th century, I'm not going to get to the 21st, were the great inflation in Europe after World War One, the Great Depression, the hyperinflation in Germany that led to the rise of Hitler, and then this inflation in the mid 70s. What was, before you go to explain inflation, why is the specter of inflation always the central thing in central bankers' minds?
Because it goes back to the first concept I said, the weird concept of fractionalized reserves. The system is not well understood. Most systems, in fact, are not well.
So much history he could have drawn from. There's so much history he could have drawn from.
That Bannon tees up, right? Like,
yeah,
you can tell from the question that there is one person here who is well versed in financial history and financial services. He's behind the camera, and he's like trying to extract something from Epstein and getting nowhere.
That's why he's not in the shot. He's probably sitting there going, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, if he would have sat there and just said, "Oh, William Jennings Bryan, you will not crucify mankind on the cross of gold," or something like that, that's like a classic, because the whole argument's always been that central bankers are concerned about stable money, right? And they're going to protect money. And generally, when you protect the value, you're protecting the people who own assets, which are generally the wealthy. So inflation's horrible for them because that actually degrades their financial assets. Something like that. I'm just saying, like, he's a genius. Trilateral Commission, 30 years old. He should do something. He's not giving it here.
A digestive
Holy
system.
stuff. This is impossible. This is impossible. The world banking system, the world currency system, the world monetary system has to be so well understood by the Greenspans of the world and the Bernankes of the world and you, right? The currency traders, the guys making $1 billion bets every day. The legendary guy on Wall Street in the late 90s, Versalin brothers.
Luvinieri?
No, the guy that wrote the money.
Michael Lewis? Polka?
Yeah.
So he's referring here to John Merriweather. John Merriweather was a legendary trader at Salomon Brothers, ran the treasury desk, and he left, I think, in the early to mid 90s, and he created Long-Term Capital, which is a huge hedge fund that unfortunately blew up in 98. But you'll see as he goes on here, he just has such contempt for people, and he just, he doesn't, he's the one who doesn't understand. Just let him go a little further.
That eventually ran the hedge fund that went Long-Term Capital.
Yes, I don't remember.
Who's the guy?
I want to say I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Lunar is big, but those guys have to understand the system perfectly.
No, they don't understand the system. They understand the local part of the system. So, for example, why is not only inflation? Most bankers are terrified if the public understood that the bank really doesn't have their money at any one time. It's one of the things during the Depression, there were runs on the bank.
All right.
The reason the banks don't keep much.
So, again, what he's saying to you, like, if you're a trader and you're especially you're what a John Merriweather was, you have to be aware of, he's going to say, oh, he knows the bond market. To know the bond market and trade the bond market, you have to know what's going on in currencies. You have to know what's going on in equities. You have to know what's going on in world events. You have to know what every major central bank in the world is doing. These guys know the system very, very well. And, it's just when someone's so contemptuous about people, it probably belies someone who really has no understanding themselves. To be a trader like a Merriweather, any guy who's like a macro hedge fund trader, you don't just understand. You understand not just your market, your particular part of the bond market, which could be in his case treasuries. You have to know what mortgages are doing. You have to know what corporates are doing. You have to know what interest rate swaps are doing and derivatives like that. You have to know what currencies are doing. You have to know what equities are doing. You have to know what let's say the 5 major central banks on the planet, what they're doing. These guys understand the system very, very well. And it just, with, the fact that he's so contemptuous and just blows it off and starts talking about nonsense, it just shows you he doesn't know anything.
Yeah. Egomaniac with an inferiority complex vibe. Like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but also has zero respect for the people who would.
Right.
Much money in the actual bank is they assume that not everyone's going to want their money on the same day. So it's not really the fear of inflation. The fear is a run on the bank. Everybody wants to take out something that doesn't really exist. Inflation is tied to interest rates. It's a more complicated example. But when your money doesn't buy the same amount of product this year than it did last year, if it buys less and less, like it happened, you use the term hyperinflation. There's certain countries that are not managed well, like in Africa at the current, a $100 billion bill, $100 billion bill in Zimbabwe is worth 1 American cent. That's the perfect example of hyperinflation. It goes up, it doubles every day. So people are afraid that their value in the system starts to break down. But so if I said to you, does your doctor understand your body system? You'd say, well, I hope so, because I want him to keep me healthy. But you could have a kidney infection. You could have a heart attack. You could have a broken knee. There's lots of pieces of this system. And in fact, when you ask the question, very few doctors understand your entire body. There's a specialist for your knee. There's a specialist for your polynoidal cyst. There's a specialist for your head. And now we have specialists in different areas. So and I'm going to get to your first question about Santa Fe Institute.
In the spirit of giving him credit where credit is due, overspecialization really is a problem in the medical field. What do you make of this analogy, though, Eric?
I mean, it's just what he's saying goes against, I think, what I was saying before, right? That you know your specialty, that's what you stick to, right? Now, granted, if I'm a treasury bond trader, that's my I know everything about that market inside and out. However, and I probably don't know enough about the mortgage-backed security market that the guys are sitting a row down from me on the trading floor, but I have to know how those guys affect me or how I affect them. That it's all kind of interrelated. And smart people, people who do this for a living, they know that. So the medical analogy is, because he constantly goes to this when he's not going back to the Santa Fe Institute. It's too simplistic, and it's too, just very black and white, meaning you're on the treasury desk, you're John Merriweather, you trade treasury bonds. That's all you know. You don't know anything else. Like everyone is in a silo, which just isn't true.
Yeah. Yeah, he's both like very ignorant and contemptuous of everyone else. So,
Right.
Charming combo.
And your body are both comprised of little systems interacting with each other and making one big system.
You expect, this is what's stunning for all the little guys out there, the populist movement, the little guys that haven't had a pay raise in 30 years. They think that these elites, have everything. The guys in the room making the decisions, the party of Davos guys. You're sitting there, you don't think many people today really understand the complexity and really all the moving pieces and how they interconnect to the world's financial system.
No, not only don't they understand the complexity, and that goes back to Santa Fe Institute was an attempt of trying to see if there was a way to mathematize, formularize, or algorithmically understand what the term complexity means. That goes back to the original question. Complex systems.
I'm sorry, I hate to keep stopping, but that phrase was like pseudo-intellectual gishgalop. Like, we're gonna mathematize and algorithmically understand the term complexity. What? I don't know.
You're starting to see it, right? We're starting to see. In fact, this interview tells you everything, right? Because he just talks, and you have to, if you're probably in the room with this guy the first time, when you walk into a room with an assumption that somebody's a smart guy or a smart gal, like, it takes a lot for you to go, wait a minute, like, this guy doesn't know anything. Right? So he's not under a microscope when he's talking to other powerful people. He's just doing his thing, and everyone assumes he knows what the hell he's talking about, which gets back into the, the land of the blind, a one-eyed man is king. He knows enough buzzwords. I don't even think he knows the right buzzwords, to be honest with you, but God bless him.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I mean, typically you would be hearing these stories about ATV and the Santa Fe Institute and the Trilateral Commission after a few drinks, maybe some drugs, like in this extravagant townhouse or on this island, and you take all of those things away, are surrounded by women, maybe girls, and you take those things away and it's just like a total empty vessel.
Yep.
Not necessarily, it's not one level of complexity. As we might say, well, our fingers are complex, the movements, the muscles of our hands, but it's not as complex as the blood system. Now I have a circulatory system. I have systems on top of systems, so that there's no one group of or person that really understands the way the body works. There's no one group that understands the way the financial systems work. You might understand U.S. bond market. Now, you've asked about the trade of long-term capital. That was a bond fund, very small part of this very complex system. So the goal of the Santa Fe Institute was to see, is there a way to get in, somehow understand how complex systems interact? Fast forward, Steve,
How do
to
we go from bonds to the
today.
Santa Fe Institute again? This is like his
Yeah,
default.
he keeps pivoting back to that Santa Fe.
Well, his safe place.
It's like, yeah, I mean, it is the first question that was asked, and he still 23 minutes in here has not answered it. So,
He's trying.
I don't know that we'll get an answer.
Google and these other engine companies, the other tech companies, are trying to build artificial intelligence. The strangest thing that they found, one of the strangest things, is that the systems that they design, this artificial intelligence, which a lot of people have heard about, is they design a bunch of systems. They're called neural nets, terms simply taken out of brain work, neurons in the brain, nets because they actually look like a net. They put in some inputs, the computers work, spit out an answer. Sounds normal to you. It's because you're thinking about that calculator you had in 1976 on your desk. When you ask the person who designed the system, how did it come to that answer? How did your neural net, can you show me the calculations? They say, no, we don't know. We don't know how.
This is so painful. It's so painful. If I was at a party trapped with this guy, I mean, for many reasons I would be disturbed, but just the trite stories. God. I mean, yeah, it does seem like this is a half-remembered, garbled lecture that he got from one of the scientists that he underwrote in order to try to launder his reputation after the 2007 conviction. And yeah, it's just very a surface level memory of some scientific presentation.
Actually came up with that answer. That's pretty strange. They take the same neural net now and they put it in front of a video game. No learning, nothing. They said to the computer, they say, sit in front of your video game and learn how to play. It seems the computer learns better than any human in history, faster than any human in history, beats any human in history. But when you ask the designer, how did it do it? No one knows. It just did it. So that's the first little touch of things that we already have gotten to a place where we don't understand it and we built it.
On Sunday afternoon,
here we go,
September 14th, 2008, where were you?
Sorry?
It was the night they put Lehman Brothers in bankruptcy in London.
I was in jail.
Seriously?
Yes.
So the financial crisis of 2008 happened when you were in jail?
Yes.
Oh, this is going to be so amazing. This is going to be so amazing. I take it you didn't have your Wall Street Journal dropped off to you in the morning, your Financial Times.
No.
How did you hear about how did you hear about, because I want
I forgot about this, but yes.
I'm trying to get, this is going to be amazing. This is really, let's go back and do that again. Sunday afternoon, because I want to find out about people, the geniuses understanding the complexity of the financial system. Because I think the best example we have is the financial crisis, the crash of 2008. Sunday afternoon, September 14th, I think it was, 2008, is when they were working feverishly in Midtown Manhattan at the Lehman Brothers offices and at various law firms around town, and with the Secretary of Treasury in the Federal Reserve, what they're going to do with Lehman. They decided they weren't going to save it. And so they prepared to put it into bankruptcy at the open of the market in London the next day. How did you hear about what was going to happen to Lehman Brothers, and what did you immediately think when you heard that it was going to be put into bankruptcy?
I'm glad you asked that question. I was in solitary confinement September 14th. And again, some of the public stories about the wonderful time I had in jail and my work release, which didn't come till months after. I'd been there since June in an 8x10 cell with a bed in the back, a 6-foot bed in the back, a chrome sink with a toilet attached to it, and a little piece of metal sticking out that was supposed to act as a table. Now, since I was in jail, there were no books. Why? There's no library. No library, but you're in jail. No, I was in jail, not prison. So in jail, I was in a place what's called the Special Housing Unit, which is for the roughest, toughest, meanest people.
Sorry. First of all, Jeffrey, let's not pretend you'd be reading those books anyway. Come on.
They had put me there, they said, for my own protection. So I was in a 8x10 cell with a little slit in the door where they would serve my food on a tray about 9 inches by 4 inches. And then as soon as I finished eating, they'd take the tray and close it down. And one of the guards said, do you understand there's Wall Street's crashing. I'm worried about my pension fund. What should I do? And I said, sorry, Wall Street's crashing. What's happened? And he said, there's some crisis and some companies are going bankrupt. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, it's all over the papers. We're all terrified. We're going to lose our life savings because we have either a 401k or our pension funds. We don't know anything about money. Mr. Epstein, can you tell us, like, what's going on? Am I going to be able to afford my children's education? Am I going to be bankrupt? Like
the screws calling him Mr. Epstein.
Yeah, no, we have to stop here because it's so great that, like, you know, these prison guards are concerned about their 401ks and their pensions, and they're like, let's ask the pedo, you know, that we just locked up. And also, Eric, you know, this is obviously has problems because it wouldn't come as a surprise to somebody that this was happening by September 2008, right?
Yeah, he would have definitely known what was going on. Certainly when he went to jail, things were really starting to heat up certainly in 2008. And as we'll get to in a second, his timeline is completely off kilter when he tells you the other company that went bankrupt.
Called Bear Stearns. Oh, no, I said. Why? Because that's the company I was a partner in. And in fact, that was a company I had a very large investment in. So, as a great story, I didn't have my Wall Street Journal, but
let's hold them for 1 second.
Early mornings, you're allowed.
Bear Stearns was taken by J.P. Morgan in March of 2008. It was kind of a shotgun wedding, if you will. At first, J.P. Morgan only paid $2 a share, which I think later got up to $10 because it was just unfair. But so Bear Stearns is out of the game. In March 2008, they're done. The final, you know, the whole deal was finalized in May 2008. So his recollection, he's talking about something that couldn't have happened. And you'll see as he goes into the story, which is pretty hilarious.
Allowed to make 2 phone calls, collect. And when you pick up the phone, you can dial a number, and when the person picks up, they say, "You're getting a call from the Palm Beach County Jail. Will you accept reverse charges?" And the person either says yes, and the call goes through, or the person says no. The person I had called was Jimmy Kane, the president of Bear Stearns. And I said, "Tell me what's going on." And so that my knowledge of the financial crisis happened with Jimmy, who was at the center of the storm, telling me about what Lehman had gone under, and they were trying to figure out a way, should they bail out Bear Stearns?
Yeah, so
The
Bear Stearns was already dead.
did it strike you at the time of the mess you had made of your life to be in a situation that you're one of the greatest financial minds in the world, looked at by world leaders and asked their, your thinking by the most prominent and important people in the world, and here you are in solitary confinement. You got to make a collect call to somebody. Did it strike you at the time how all the threads of your life had come together and put you in a position, or you had put yourself in that position?
No.
So it never struck you when you had to make one of your 50% of your collect calls that day, you call the president or the head of the CEO of Bear Stearns, the biggest financial event in your life is taking place, of which one, every important person in the world would be seeking your opinion. Number two would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to apply your craft. Number three, it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to make money if you were smart, and obviously you're smart. You're telling me here, truthfully,
So let's stop there for a second. So what happened to Jeffrey Epstein was he bought into 2 Bear Stearns asset management funds. They were both called subprime bond funds that were leveraged up a lot. They used derivatives, and I believe Epstein bought into them late 2006, and all the smart money was starting to realize that the game was over. Like literally, it was headed in the wrong direction. I don't think anybody yet saw how bad it was going to get, unless you could see everything in its totality. But Jeffrey invested in 2 funds that probably smart guys were getting out of when he was getting in. So you could almost say he got into the dumb guy trade at exactly the wrong time. And in 2007, those funds blew up, and I believe he lost about $60 million in the trade. And then he ended up suing later on. He actually sued JP Morgan because they owned Bear Stearns, and I think he got about $9 million back or something like that. But again, the man, he should have intimately known what was going on, because he lost his ass a year before.
Sort of amazing that some people were able to get some accountability for what happened. Not the little guy, though, as Bannon would put it.
Right.
Jeffrey Epstein got what was it, 9 million back.
I mean, anybody who looked at that fund knew they were taking a lot of risk. I mean, you had to know you were taking a lot of risk, and you're putting up that kind of money because you're expecting this huge return. But with huge potential returns could come huge losses, and that's what happened to him.
And the party is sort of ending, right?
Yeah, the party. Yeah, like towards the end of 2006. Yeah, I mean, the parties were still going. I mean, the real parties, the ASF conferences in Las Vegas were still happening. That was like a gigantic Roman toga party for the street every year, and it celebrated all this crap, all the CDOs and stuff like that. But yeah, everybody was starting to get a little queasy that things were probably overdone, let's say.
Hit you at all of how you'd ended up in a place where you had to make a collect phone call from a jail cell that was 6x9 with a steel bed and your food being passed in through a slot?
The question you want to ask is, who was the other call to?
Who was the other call to?
The other call was to my friend at J.P. Morgan, who was then, I didn't know it at the time, trying to buy Bear Stearns. So at one point, I had two phones. It was difficult because they're afraid people are going to hang themselves with the phone cord, so they don't actually come together in their
Premonition.
So I was on phones talking to Bear Stearns and J.P. Morgan at the same time.
So there's a phantom guy on the phone from J.P. Morgan that's trying to buy a company that they bought 6 months before. So, like I think we said, unless he had a time machine, which, who knows? Yeah,
The Santa Fe Institute.
Right. Back to which gets us back to the first question.
And it never struck you about how to end up in a situation like this?
No, that would be probably means I would be too self-aware.
You can't possibly expect me to believe this.
I know. I don't believe it.
It's
Even
you're telling me that during that day, you never had a moment. You sat there and go, what the fuck have I done with my life? I'm in a 6x9 jail cell when I should be on a trading desk, or I should be in my $250 million, greatest townhouse in New York City, taking calls from the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of China, the head of Russia, the president of the United States, to save the world's population from a financial debacle. You're honestly expecting me to believe that never happened?
You're suggesting I was somewhat suppressed, and
there's got to be a great comedy with that. Like, can you imagine calling this guy, which we'll see later? People did call this guy. He says people call, and getting the answers about the body and the gallbladder and the systems. Like that would be great.
Yeah. Jimmy Kane is on the phone in, the middle of the storm, and he's like, you have to mathematize the word complexity. That's the answer here.
What the fuck are you talking about? I worked at Bear Stearns for a couple of years, and I only had one interaction with Jimmy Kane. Just a quick story. So a buddy and I were going out to meet clients. It was about 5:00. We're in a packed elevator, and the elevator door opens on the 6th floor, and that's where the executives were. Jimmy walks in with a lit cigar, and he basically looks around the room, I own this place. I'm smoking my cigar. And I guess he knew that my buddy and I worked on the trading desk, because he looked at us and he goes, "Early night, boys? Early day?" We said, No, Jimmy, we're going out seeing clients." Goes, Good. And he just blows fucking smoke all through the elevator. So imagine that's the guy that this guy's making a collect phone call to. If I would love to have heard that conversation if it actually happened.
He'd probably put out a cigar in this guy's face
Right,
because he wasted his time at a time like this.
Oh, God.
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation.
No, I would just say how strange that this happens. It's strange. I'm wearing a jumpsuit and flip flops.
What color was the jumpsuit?
Brown.
Brown jumpsuit.
Yes.
I notice I don't see you in a lot of brown.
No.
Brown jumpsuit and flip flops.
Flip flops. Yes.
With no access to books, no access to newspapers,
no access to anything.
You had lived on information.
Except my Almond Joy bars. I had extra Almond Joy bars.
Did you eat Almond Joy bars and things like that because you're afraid of what the cooks did to your food?
Yes.
Is that because of that you were in for the crimes that you were in for?
No, it was just in fact,
Is it because you're wealthy?
Yes.
How did you know that?
Well, people would constantly come if I was passing by, or I'd have to go for my medical. People would either ask to borrow money or make some other types of comments about. In the beginning,
what were the comments? At the beginning, what were the comments?
It serves you fucking rich guys right that you're here next to me.
There was nothing about your crimes.
No.
So all this rumor you hear all the time about people in prison that commit the type of crimes you commit, you're saying in your personal.
You really think the crack dealer in cell 5 has any clue who this guy is?
Well, he needs to know about his 401k.
Right. Mr. Epstein.
It was all because you were rich.
Yes.
And it was all because they wanted to borrow money.
Or get advice.
Where they get advice to
Go long. Yes.
Are you telling me
it's just time to buy.
You're telling me in solitary confinement they're interested in going long?
Yeah. They want to know
What does that say about human nature?
Well, what I think the people find, one of the reasons they wanted to keep me in solitary confinement was they're afraid that everybody would want to know which stocks to buy. But what happened was,
Buy Bear
after
Stearns.
this crisis, now it's on the front page of every
I
newspaper.
don't want to lose this day.
Sorry.
When you first heard that, was it Bear Stearns had been kicked into bankruptcy, 6 months before?
No, it's just the same time. This is part of the same deal.
I thought, no. Bear Stearns, they saved Bear Stearns and didn't save Lehman Brothers. That's
right.
6 months before they had bailed out Bear Stearns, but Bear Stearns was still a zombie,
A shell of its former
a
self.
former self. But they had quote unquote saved it. Why did they make the decision?
See, you can hear Bannon, who actually does know what he's talking about, try to reconcile his correct understanding of the chronology with Epstein's completely, ass backwards one.
Yeah.
In your mind, why did Hank Paulson and Bernanke what's this concept of moral hazard? Explain to the audience what moral hazard is, and why did they save Bear Stearns 6 months?
I'm moral hazard.
And why did the smartest guys in the room decide not to save Lehman Brothers?
It's a good question. The real issue is I'd have to go back when you have these systems to the way your doctor responds to any type of emergency in your body. If they might decide to save your kidneys and let your gallbladder go because the gallbladder is less important to your overall system. If at that time, even it's not that long ago, the boogeyman was when said, well, what really happened? Jeffrey, what really happened? What is this financial crisis? And, some of the progressives and the right wing blame it on the banks. It was the banks' fault. And it's the fault of this very esoteric, unknown concept of derivatives. It was really the derivatives that caused this financial crisis because the derivatives got somehow out of control and in the Mickey Mouse.
And that was the way you started your financial.
Eric, is that your understanding of the crisis, that the derivatives got out of hand in the Mickey Mouse? Is that your?
Well, yes, the Mickey Mouse part, but that was we get back to the funds that he lost a lot of money on. That was all derivatives, right? Like that was, you take a bond, and we won't get into that, but you do what's called the credit default swap, but reference that bond, and you could lever that thing up you could put up $1 million to basically have exposure like you have $15 million, which means if that thing goes down like 6-7%, your $1 million is gone. So the fact that he just, and Bannon gave him Bannon again gave him a layup, and he just keeps missing it.
Right through derivatives.
Yes. But derivatives were not the cause. The derivatives were not the cause at all. It's like saying your hair was the cause of your heart attack because it was on top.
So what was the cause?
There isn't, let me say, there's no one specific cause. These are system collapses. So many times when you have to make your death certificate, when you say, well, what did he die from? They'll say heart failure. But
let's go back to the moral hazard part, so again, anybody who was there and kind of knows has all the access to all the information that he had. Yeah, he was in jail, but he knew. Bannon's saying basically, why did they let Lehman go? He basically says they bailed out Bear Stearns, but they didn't. They got taken over, but they didn't get bailed out. Why did they let Lehman go and let Goldman live, Morgan Stanley live, and Merrill Lynch live? Because they were all dead. Like they were gone. Like if you remember, or it's come out that Morgan Stanley called the New York Fed Sunday night and said, we can't open the doors tomorrow. Like it's done. All these guys were livid up to the kazoo. Everybody was a lot of their funding came from hedge funds that kept their money there, like a bank almost. They were called a prime broker. And then you also had what we'll get into Bannon tries to give them this one too, the commercial paper market, very short-term funding that these guys were very reliant on. Remember, they were not commercial banks. They didn't take deposits and they couldn't go to the Fed. So what happened was, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't like Lehman's CEO, Dick Fuld, whatever it was, they let Lehman go. They made Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs banks that night, and Merrill Lynch and Bank of America were put together. That was another shotgun wedding. So it's a very fair question to ask. Why did Lehman go, and why did these guys get saved? But again, it's fine to say that. It's fine for him to say, if he knew anything, to say something like that. Hey, it was unfair, or you know what, Dick Fuld was an asshole, and everybody knew it, and it was time for him to go. Who knows, right? But again, he just very disappointing.
Yeah, he sort of struggles to retrieve even those sort of higher level details.
Right.
Heart failure? Well, he had low blood pressure. His sugar was high. He was diabetic. He had all these other problems. But they said, no. We need a word on your death certificate. Did he die from brain damage? Did he die from heart failure? That's the financial crisis. Many people said, well, what caused it? They wrote, like on its death certificate, derivatives. But derivatives are not a fundamental cause of anything.
Was it Sunday or Monday? I take it was Monday morning when you made your two collect calls and you're talking to Bear Stearns on one hand and Morgan Stanley on the other.
JP Morgan.
That was Monday morning. Did you, Jeffrey, being one of the financial geniuses in the world, did you understand what Lehman Brothers going into bankruptcy, the domino effect that by Thursday the financial system would be under such extremis that if it didn't have $1 trillion cash infusion in the United States, it might collapse? Did you know that at the time? Did you view that at the time?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Again, I don't want to bore you or the audience with the idea of it's a medical procedure, but you had system failures. So you'd recognize that if I said to you, did you realize when your father was on the ground and he was clutching his chest and he couldn't breathe, it was a bad situation. He could die. That's how I saw it.
Did you immediately think about the commercial paper market? I mean, the mechanical triggers that actually you had to blow through these circuit boards. Did you know the circuits?
He's giving it to you.
Understand the circuits, or did you have a concept of the circuits that were going to get blown through?
Yes, but only because of an analogy to a body. And in fact, from my telephones against the wall with my little metal wires.
Crying.
The next day, I talked to another person in Washington.
Yeah, he sort of gives them the buzzword. He's like, commercial paper market. Commercial.
Maybe we'd ring a bell. Oh yeah, it's terrible.
But I thought was happening, and I made the same discussion about
they were at the Treasury Department.
Yes.
So in a 6x9 cell
the phones were outside the cell
in Palm Beach County, California,
West Palm Beach, Florida.
West Palm Beach, Florida.
That's what your juice diet.
West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. You're making a call to Washington D.C. to talk to some deputy secretary of Treasury. Someone in Treasury. Right. Someone in Treasury.
Right.
And that does not, the night before you go to bed, it doesn't dawn on you at all. You never have a moment of self-reflection that, how did I end up on this metal cot when I should be at the center of things?
No, I had a telephone. So I said, I can talk to, it makes no difference where I am. In fact, I'm still talking to the same person if I was at my home in Palm Beach. But I'm here in jail.
Home in Palm Beach.
I can dial my own phone.
That's bullshit. No, but you can also make 1,000 phone calls. Here you got to make one, and he's got to take.
Think how much better that was. I had to decide who was the right person to call. That was unusual for me.
I thought he got 2 phone calls.
Right, 2 a day. I think he gets, yeah, right. And that was the recipient of his wisdom was some dude at the Treasury Department.
Right.
Poor bastard.
What was the advice you gave her?
I said, you have a sick patient. And it's very much like a sick patient in the emergency room. You can't think about it like your car. People in normal walks of life think about money and things as a machine. And unfortunately, so if your car breaks, cars are always easy to fix. My jets, my cars, if it breaks, I know it can be fixed because it simply follows the same pattern. If this part breaks, you replace the part and the thing works again.
What are you
People
talking about?
and the financial system are not machines. They can't be fixed the same way. You can't simply take out put some more juice into the commercial paper market, and that's like replacing the carburetor on the car.
He got there.
Much,
He said
he got
commercial
there.
paper market. Hey, credit.
Long context, but he got there.
More, I have a patient who can't breathe, has a stomach problem, can't see, looks bleeding at the same time. What do I do first? I have to think about it as a system. Where's the most logical place? What's the most dangerous place? If your heart stopped, we have to start your heart again.
Can you imagine, just for a second, can you imagine now having to, like, you want something from this guy, you know, like you want his connection to Leon Black or something like that at Apollo. So you got to go and talk to this guy. And you probably have to put up listening to this shit for like an hour, right? And just nodding your head, yeah, because you know that he's got that Rolodex to get you to where you need to go, but the price of admission is to listen to this.
Yeah, pour one out for Brad Karp at Paul Weiss. He probably had to tolerate a lot of, cocktail parties about the Santa Fe Institute. And yeah, I don't know, car mechanics for some reason. Anyway.
Sorry.
In the equivalent to the money market, why do I have to start your heart again? I need to get your blood flowing. If your blood stops, you're dead. If liquidity, which is the equivalent of blood in the financial system, dries up.
Once liquidity is basically cash. You put cash into this.
Forget about what it is.
Okay.
Liquidity is liquidity.
Got that wrong.
It allows the system, it's the blood of the system. You need to pump blood hard into the body of the economy to keep it flowing. And if you're, especially when you're worried about someone dying, you're not going to be worried about the niceties of, well, you got the shirt dirty, some damage. Pumping that blood, keep that heart.
When you talk to the person in Treasury,
as a writer, I just want to say, like, okay, liquidity is like an annoying tautology, but like if it's a metaphor about blood and he's like doing some sort of poetic thing, like I kind of get that.
Yeah, no, he actually, we give him credit for that. He did get it right. Is that liquidity? The blood is the blood of the financial system, and the financial system was having a heart attack.
Did you get a feeling as you were sitting in your 6x9 jail cell in West Palm Beach, Florida, that they were on top of things?
No, you can't. It's impossible to be on top of things. There's no such thing. It's, again, the doctor watching the patient die. You hopefully have some confidence that he's seen it before. He recognizes that there are some steps he has to take first before he bandages the guy's finger or worries about what shoes he has on. So you hope that the people in charge, your doctors who are working on the emergency patient, have enough experience and, frankly, judgment to try to keep the patient alive.
Did you think that they had those things, patience and judgment?
They had pretty good judgment, and you needed a lot of luck, just like in the dead patient. You need to, hopefully you put that blood in and it's not too late. And you make some mistakes, but you have to know you're going to have to give it a shock.
In the run up to the September crash of 2008,
yeah,
I guess you weren't occupied with finance. That whole summer, how long had you been in jail?
I went to jail June 30th.
So the entire summer.
Yes.
Before you went into jail, you were still very active in the financial markets.
Yes.
When you say active, you trade currencies every day, you trade stocks every day. When people,
I don't do anything.
Someone like you, or you give advice to people to trade stocks or trade currencies.
I don't trade every day. I think that's like Woody Allen said. It's you can't beat the bank. So I try to pick my spots. George Soros picked his spot when the pound collapsed. This would have been a great money-making opportunity that passed me by when I was in jail, but that's not how I think.
In the run up to
Money
that,
making
in the spring of 2008, that's when Bear Stearns got in problems, I think, in the spring of 2008, and they decided to bail it out. Did the Bear Stearns guys talk to you for advice at that time when the big crisis in Bear Stearns?
No, but see, again, unbeknownst to most people, and it's easy to blame people for the financial crisis, like you'd blame someone for giving your father the drink before he had his heart attack. But what really happened, the real enemy of the finance system was Bill Clinton. And if you ask me what and who caused the financial crisis, I would tell you it was Bill Clinton.
Because of what Bob Rubin and he did to deregulate the financial system?
No. Okay, so hold on, because Bannon's giving it to him. He's giving it to him, and this is where I thought, okay, he's going to get this one right. It's like, okay, Bill Clinton, under his administration, they deregulated the financial sector. It allowed Goldman and Merrill. Remember, I said that they weren't banks at the time; they didn't take deposits, but it allowed them to put up a lot less capital and leverage themselves up. And without that, this situation, it could have been bad, but it wouldn't have been that bad because those guys couldn't have done what they did. They wouldn't have been able to put on the risk that they did.
And remind people who Rubin is.
Oh, so Bob Rubin he was the partner. He was like the managing partner of Goldman Sachs up until the early 90s, and then he was an advisor to Clinton, and then he became the Treasury Secretary, I think, in the second term. But Rubin was obviously very, very knowledgeable of the street and everything. Rubin actually blew up. He ended up at Citibank, and I think he walked out of there with $100 million. And as Citibank was going down almost went down the tubes. But Bob Rubin, Hank Paulson at the time, he was the head of Goldman Sachs. Clinton was the president. Phil Graham, I remember, and Leach I think they were the two senators that created this bill. But that was the bill that kind of really put a lot of this in motion. But we'll see. And so Bannon's trying to give it to him here. And this might have saved the day. Like if he had answered this one right, we would give him a pass. He'd get a passing grade for the whole thing, and we'd move him on to the next grade.
As the last time we had our 60-minute interview, you talked to me about home ownership. And you asked me whether everyone should own a home. And I told you, no, it's too risky.
So the financial collapse of 2008 is because of hardworking African Americans, Hispanics, and whites who wanted to have a ownership stake in the society that all rests on their shoulders. They're the culprits.
No, not at all.
Okay, then
I didn't say they were the culprits. I was pretty clear it was Bill Clinton.
Okay.
Why was it Bill Clinton? Because Bill Clinton wanted to get votes from those people. And he sold them the idea that instead of renting in a house, and historically the values of houses have gone up, and he said, you guys in these local communities who haven't been able to afford a house before, I'm going to show you a way. I'm going to give you a way because I'm sure I'll get your vote that you can own a house because I want your vote.
Do you remember this?
So what we're going to do is I'm going to let you buy a house, Mr. Bannon, when you really, you're right on the border, maybe, or not even on the border. Your credit is not good. Okay, let's be honest. And it's not my fault. It's not Bill Clinton's fault. But whatever happens, at the moment your credit score or whatever it is, your credit's not good. Now, normally, you come to me and want to borrow money. I'm a bank. And I say, I'm sorry, Mr. Bannon, I can't lend you money because your credit score is not up to where it needs to be. Hopefully, if you work harder and clean up some of your problems, it will be. But no, what I say to you is I'm going to figure out a way to lend you, not give you. I'm going to lend you money anyway, though you don't have a good credit score. And don't worry, I'm going to get rid of the term that you don't have bad credit. Bad credit sounds pejorative. You don't want to be a person.
Sounds judgmental.
Yes, sounds judgmental. So what we're going to do is we're going to call your credit situation subprime.
That's a nice term.
Oh, nobody knows what that means. Subprime. That means prime is good credit. Subprime is not good credit, less than good credit. So we'll call it something that people really won't follow. And we'll tell you what, we're going to have people lend you money, though you are a subprime borrower.
Did Clinton come up
And
with the term subprime?
Subprime lending has been around forever, right? It was a niche business, but it was a profitable business, and obviously the people that you were lending money to were a higher risk, so you charged a higher rate. It wasn't as prolific as it became in I guess it really kind of ramped up in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003. But it wasn't something new that Bill Clinton came up with. Subprime lending has been around for quite a long time.
And this is a pretty shallow analysis. It's sort of like puts the onus on the individual rather than the like systems.
Yes, it's basically saying that. Well, what he's going to say is that basically a gun was put to the bank's head to lend to people they normally wouldn't lend to, and that absolves them of the issue, right? Because then they could say, well, look, we had it. And that, honestly, that is what a lot of people say now, which is, complete nonsense. But yeah, that's where he's going. Like I said, he reminds me of kind of the old Uncle Jeffrey that, at Thanksgiving has had one too many. And now he's going to sit here and try to explain why affirmative action is bad.
And he's sort of being mocked by Bannon, like, oh, you're saying it's the hardworking people who wanted a piece of,
Yeah,
of the American dream.
And I think Bannon actually went into that when I was listening to him, an intelligent conversation he was having he was being interviewed, and he was basically saying that all these guys are blaming, the Community Reinvestment Act and the poor people and this and that. The banks had to lend to them. I think he actually spoke on that, but I off the top of my head, but I think he did. But maybe he's just trying to get Jeffrey to get off the ledge a little bit, but.
Yeah, he's trying to help him out, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of goes back to what I appreciate about the Epstein story, which I do feel like it's a prism into this, this world. And this explanation probably is very popular among the people that, Epstein hangs out with.
Yeah.
I will figure out some government agencies to guarantee your loan, though I don't think you're a good risk. So the banks say, no, we don't want, initially, the bank said, sorry, this is too risky, Mr. President, for us. We're in the business of managing risk. It's not our money. It's the hard-working people's money sitting in our bank. We can't lend to people whose credit is not prime. You're asking us to lend to people who are subprime. And he says, here's the key, if you don't, Mr. Bannon, I'm going to make sure the Justice Department charges you with discriminatory lending because you refuse to lend to my subprimers. In business terms, you should never lend to. But what we'll do is I'm going to form an agency called Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae. Another agency names.
He's having problems with time again. So Fannie Mae was first, I think Fannie Mae was formed in 38. I think Ginnie Mae was formed in 68. And he's leaving out Freddie, but the way he's describing it is that, which is kind of amazing, but he's kind of describing it as that Bill Clinton created these entities from scratch to guarantee these loans, which is incorrect.
Loan. So don't worry. Don't worry. You don't have to pay it back anymore. Even though and maybe you don't even have to work as hard anymore. That's probably a harsh statement, but yes. These players, these two big firms, Fannie Mae, will guarantee the fact that that bank will receive its money. Now, the bank says, wow, best deal in history. I refused to lend to Mr. Bannon, but now he has the big brother, his Uncle Sam. He went to his Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam says, I'm guaranteeing it. The
Now,
bank says, I want everybody. Give me as
while it is true that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac blew up, a lot of it due to they lowered their standards quite a bit with regards to the mortgages that they were insuring when they issued mortgage-backed securities. It was a massive ecosystem of Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, Credit Suisse, you name it. Everybody had their own mortgage conduit, and the conduit was there to make these subprime loans that then would go into the securities. So it was this. A lot of this was outside of the Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae guarantor programs. This was a big. This is what the street was doing certainly for the first 6 or 7 years of the decade, and that's where everybody was making their money. So he just doesn't got it here.
many people as you can give me, because Uncle Sam is the best credit in the world. Not only it's the United States government. We'll take it all. We'll take as much subprime as we can handle, because it's the best investment for the moment. It's a strange investment because it has politics that has inserted its way into the numbers. Politics doesn't belong in the markets. But now we're going to have, I want the votes. We'll make guarantees that you who can't get a house normally will be able to get a house from the.
Now here's a guy
banks.
Here's a guy that invested in this $60 million of his own money, and then when he lost it, he sued to get it back. Like, there's your moral hazard right there.
Side note, it is interesting, given his friendship with Bill Clinton, that he's throwing him under the bus.
Yes.
But
I wonder what happens.
Yeah. Does this understanding come from his direct relationship with Clinton, or was it born out of his resentment after Clinton, kept his distance?
I think it is.
Yeah, could be.
The best deal in history. We will package 100, 300, 1,000 of you subprimers, and we'll sell it off to somebody else. And the whole system becomes mired in subprime mortgages. That's becomes the.
What do you mean mired? Is there too much supply? Is the supply demand problem? You get too much supply?
No, it's a very good question. What does too much supply mean? Well, then you get to go back to your first question to me. Government leaders know if they're good, and they can do mathematics, they can balance their checkbooks. So certain people in Congress said, well, how do you value these subprime mortgages? The banks say we've been valuing them the same way we've always valued them for the past 20 years. The accounting firms, there's something in this country called GAAP accounting, which is a standard type of accounting. And we account for them the same way we've always accounted for them. If we paid $1,000 for your mortgage last night, when we put it on our books today, we're going to say its value is $1,000. Makes sense. I paid for it. What's its value? It's $1,000. That's what I paid for it last night. No. The Congress people said, that's not really a good answer, That doesn't give us confidence that you know what you're doing. Because what happens if you have to sell it tomorrow morning?
But I don't.
There's a.
So what he's trying to say is that when a bank puts a loan on its books, let's say it makes a mortgage to you, Emily, and it puts that $100,000 loan on the books, it's what's called it's held to maturity, meaning you classify things differently. Held to maturity means it's on your books. You don't have to market to market. Held for trading means you have to, you have to market to market, but it doesn't hit the income statement; it hits capital. And then held for trading means, yeah, that's mark to market. So if you're in the business, if you have a subsidiary or a desk in the bank that's trading treasury bonds, every day they have to mark that position to market. But what he's talking about is non-existent.
And so the concepts that you're describing accurately, can you give, us non-experts like a sense? Is this something that you would encounter in a 101 class, or is it a sophisticated understanding?
Yeah, with a little accounting, like if you took accounting 101, or even like, like money in banking, which may be a little later in your education. But yeah, they would talk about, hey, this is the different accounting treatments that banks have to use. And they don't, if they make mortgages to somebody and they keep the mortgage, they don't have to market to market. And that's
It
what
does
he's talking about.
Well, it does kind of seem like he like looked up certain concepts, like introductory concepts, and is like trying to regurgitate them to like give the impression that he knows what he's talking about.
Bannon gave him a whole stack of books. Like, dude, just read something for Christ's sakes.
Yes, financial services for dummies, and he's like half remembering it, and sometimes just wrong.
I watched this and maybe he had some serious cognitive decline, or I don't know, maybe that experience in jail, or I don't know.
It's a Biden scenario. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but to like never make sense, to never be able to retrieve sort of any sort of insight whatsoever. That's interesting.
Something's happened and you have to sell it. Remember the kinds of stress tests? Would you be able to value it at what you paid for it the day before? And Wall Street says, that's not the way you can think about this. This is crazy. We always value things at the cost from the day before. And they changed the accounting method, in essence, to say not what it was worth yesterday, but if I have to sell, what would it be worth? That's impossible. So what happens is every bank now has to value something they bought yesterday at lower than they paid. Never before in 20 years did they have to do this. So something they bought at 1,000 on their books was 1,000 is now 990.
Well, it would be that, like, if the bank, if the borrower defaults, or there's like, you can make loans at a bank, and then if it starts running into trouble, you have to start classifying it and potentially marking it down and taking it and actually taking a loss. But that would be the only reason really why a bank would take a mortgage loan on its books and write it down. So he's kind of wrong here.
You asked the question about what did I start to think about. Something's 1,000 and 990. This person now has to value it at 980.
When did you first start to get nervous? Understanding Bill Clinton.
When I changed my shirt.
And his glasses. But he still has glasses because he has to look.
That's very short.
I saw that black. Are you okay? Yeah, great. I think we're gonna have all kinds of changes.
I'm experimenting.
Yeah. When did you get a feeling? Did you ever anticipate before it happened something like 2008 could happen?
No.
How could that be?
It's the word I'm going to beat it to death, is that it's very much like would I anticipate I'll have a heart attack tomorrow? Unlikely.
Was 2008 a heart attack or a stroke? Debilitating.
It's a better. It was both. Why was it both? Because in fact, as I said, the blood was getting dried up in the system, and the head, which is sort of the central bank, wasn't working. So to some extent, it was a combination. It was just a crisis.
Did you see that building up over time?
It's always been lurking in the background. I mean, if you have an older parent, would you say it's possible? Did you anticipate him having a heart attack today? No, you hope things are going to go better and maybe they'll fix it up. The system was getting too complex, and it wasn't based on derivatives, because what people keep forgetting, and as I was just explaining, Wall Street And in many professions, including Wall Street makes it sound complicated. They don't want the little guy to understand what they do because they make so much money and they don't do very much. So they couch it in words like derivative and stock options and commodity futures and different types of contracts. It's all everyone is capable of understanding it. It is not complicated. But Wall Street, because they make so much money from doing fairly simple things, needs to make it more complicated than it really is.
We need to note this is a complete 180 because we've been hearing for an hour that nobody understands it. I don't even understand it. It's some giant mystery. And now he's like, anyone can understand it, even the little guy.
It's just like these random thoughts just kind of fire in his brain, and he spits them out. You'd almost think he's dying to get done with it. Like, wouldn't you be dying to get done with this interview?
Yes, I would. I mean, I would be humiliated if I was like being asked about something that I clearly knew nothing about, and I had to like make everything a sort of existential question. Liquidity, right. What is liquidity anyway? You know, it's all relative. No, I would be dying inside. But he, you know, I think it speaks to his personality.
Do you like Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah,
There's a scene. When I was watching this, I was thinking of a scene. You remember when Larry's in the restaurant, he's eating by himself, and the guy sitting next to him he's by himself too, and he's talking on his phone, and he's like has the earpiece in, and so Larry's getting annoyed. So Larry starts having a conversation, and it's a completely ridiculous conversation. And I tried to comb my hair with an apple, and it was terrible. And I was like, well, that's literally.
I'm struggling with it because, and I don't know how Bannon got through it. It's like, it's hypnotizing, the nonsensical, like ramblings. It's like putting me to sleep almost. I don't know.
We had a very big recession in the early 90s based upon real estate and Japan basically imploding.
Let's again.
Okay.
You had a recession in the 90s. I don't know what it's based upon. It's always interesting to look back and say.
So again, let's go back to the man was on the Trilateral Commission, right? And he's talking specifically about being there at his first meeting that he found boring in 1990-91. So, I mean, anybody who just has any kind of experience, knowledge in this, that was a bad time. Like, I mean, literally, you had Saddam went into Kuwait, and we had the huge oil shock and all the potential of war. We had the savings and loan crisis was back then when a few $100 billion was a big number. We had that. We had a commercial real estate crisis. We had the junk bond explosion. Like literally a whole series of things happened at the same time. And like Bannon said, we ended up having a very serious recession. So, and he can't conjure up any of the real reasons why. He could have picked any of those, and he didn't pick any because he doesn't know them or remember them.
But allegedly he is on the Trilateral Commission for his knowledge of finances, you know, at this very time.
He was playing with his calculator, doing square roots.
Separate from there's certain triggers, like in the 70s there was
what do you think it was based upon the 90s downturn? It's clearly there was a huge downturn.
No, I know there was a downturn. That's what I know for sure.
That's a fact.
All. Everything else is sort of speculation about why did he have.
I understand that, but there's some speculation that has 0% probability of being true, and there's others that have 90%. In the range, when you look at the range of alternatives of what could have caused it, in 90, and what I'm trying to do is get you all the way up to 2008. Look, you're the smartest guy in the room, right? You know that. Do you think there's anybody in the world today?
Oops, this is going to be a bad question.
No, but do you think anybody in the world today?
This could be a bad answer.
Alan Greenspans, the Bernanke. Is there any central banker you know, any partner of any Wall Street firm, any guy running a trading desk? And I would take it that would be, or anybody at a Larry Fink at BlackRock, Steve Schwartzman at Blackstone. the top 100 financial guys, and let's throw in a couple of Nobel economists, and let's throw in the best professors at Wharton, at Harvard, at Stanford. Do you think that there's anybody that understands money or understands the world's financial system as good as you?
There must be.
But it doesn't come to the top of the head.
No.
Okay, fine. Now,
Now
that I've gotten that, let's go back to 1990. In that arc from the fall of the Berlin Wall to 2008.
Good.
We started with the implosion in Tokyo of the Japanese economy, Japanese financial markets. We had the huge run up in internet stocks, right? We had the implosion of that in 2000. The bankruptcy of Drexel Burnham in 90, implosion of Japan, huge run up in equity markets for the internet, implosion of the internet 2000, 10 years later, roughly. And then this run up through the Iraq war and all that, the run up to 2008. Every 10 years, it seems like we're in some sort of 10 years before the 1990s was the 70s.
You sound like an astrologer.
Okay.
And not a financial person.
I agree with you, a mathematician. It just seems to me a pattern of every 10 years.
That's misleading. That's exactly right. Because people like to see patterns. People like to see patterns where there are none.
So a pattern of a financial crisis every 10 years is just in my mind.
Yes.
Even though it happened.
Long-term capital, that had to be bailed out back in the late 90s when everybody panicked. And that wasn't that bailout today would look small, and it was a $5 billion, or was $30 billion.
Businesses fail all the time.
Or Bannon, he's like, okay, he clearly doesn't know anything about 2008. Let me go back further in history. Maybe he knows more about the 90s, and the answer is nope, still just as shallow and empty.
At this point, Bannon's like, all right, I'm getting paid by the hour here, so I gotta keep this going another half an hour.
The Federal Reserve stepped in.
But I'm saying people go bad. Things go bad all the time.
Yes, the local, you're correct. The audience is watching this, the little guys, they go bankrupt all the time and nobody gives a shit. You know why? They're a little guy. But when long-term capital management goes bankrupt, or Bear Stearns goes bankrupt, or Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, people care because
it's an unfair characterization.
Why do you say
Because again, it's the complexity of the situation. If you think about you have a complex system, you have your body. Now, in fact, the little guy is like,
I thought everything was
this is
not complex, right? He just spent 5 minutes talking about how Wall Street, it's very understandable, it's easy, it's not, and now suddenly everything is complex and nobody understands anything.
Yeah, well, I think you have to mathematize the word complexity, right? That's the gem he dropped earlier. Yes, so
algorithmically mathematize.
Yeah. I think once you understand that, it might be a little too sophisticated for you, Eric. I mean, it's
probably that's what's really bothering me.
But Bear Stearns is your heart.
That's correct. The banking system is my heart. The system, I can't risk my because remember, it's not only my.
You haven't been able to name.
Hang on.
You haven't. Hang on. No, hang on.
I was trying to hang. I wanted to see if the hang on worked.
No. You haven't been able. You're not good enough. You're like junior wizard trying to do it. You haven't. I'll say, since we can't name another guy that's as good as you. There may be a couple out there. You're not bragging. You're humble. It had to be sometime. Please tell me there was some time before you went to jail and basically got cut off from daily information in the summer of 2008, that you started to get very nervous that this complex system, that something was deeply wrong.
Okay, first, let's go back. When I say no one understands the system better than I do, it doesn't mean
You always sound like a doctor. You're afraid he's going to get sued for giving a thing.
Yes,
you're not taking on any liability. There's no contingent liability here. For
no. But the word "understand" is the problem. Okay. I don't understand the system. So I don't understand the financial system.
Please stop. You cannot sit here and tell me. No, what we just went through. I'll go through again. The hedge fund managers, the money managers, the central bankers, the commercial bankers, the heads of the investment banks, the heads of all the trading desks, the top economists, and I'll throw in the business school lecturers at Stanford. Of all the top 200, 250, you can't name at the top of your head the guys are at least at your level You have to understand it somewhat.
No, sorry, we all don't understand it.
That feels like a
No one
truthful
understands.
statement.
It's a myth.
No, don't understand.
Yes.
And I honestly, I can't tell if Bannon is sort of like subtly mocking him. I think that would be hilarious. Or if he really is one of those people that, we discussed earlier, who was sort of taken in by all of the, all of his wealth, and the fact that all of these very powerful people were like in his inner circle. It's hard for me to tell. It seems at points that Bannon is like actually anticipating real answers to sophisticated questions about the history of finance, and is not getting them. But it's like, trying to squeeze blood from a stone. He's just like getting nothing.
It's really incredible, and maybe we'll talk at the end, but it's like, look, once you're in, right? I mean, so he got himself in early. He obviously has a talent of whatever to get people on his side, and we've seen, like, we're watching the presents that he would give people. He would go out of his way to make sure that someone's daughter got into this college or that, you know what I'm saying? And eventually, once you're in. You're going to get the best private equity deals. You're going to get into the hedge funds. You're going to get, every time it seemed like he got in, but he would insert himself into negotiations that I don't know why he was ever involved, and somehow walk away with a $20 million, fee. So after a while, it doesn't matter what this guy knows, right? I mean, he's wealthy, and before he went to jail for the last time, he's a guy that you have to know him. If you want something done, and you want to be in those waters. This guy, for however he did it, is in the middle of everything.
Yeah,
And
he's at the nexus.
Yeah, that's the magic.
Right.
I don't know if I'm
It's that's part of the problem. It's impossible to understand. That word "understand" simply means if this happens here, that will happen there. It's predictable. Understanding means it's predictable. It's not predictable. That's the problem. It's in complex systems. That was the fascination. Is there a way to tease out some level of predictability?
So
No. In fact, you would ask the question. It's a great question, which was it a stroke or a heart attack? Now, most people don't know that before they were going to have a stroke, they had a stroke. They just have a stroke. Do they understand why? In hindsight, you go back and you can make lots of explanations that might sound good. And if you're talking to the working man, you're using language that he'll never understand. It's complex. So he, just like going to his doctor, he says he has a gastrointestinal problem, or he has diverticulitis, as opposed to saying, you had a stomach ache, you ate bad food. People don't like to say it in normal everyman terms. The system had a stroke, but we don't know why.
But you just, okay. Hardworking people, and there's a great social benefit, would you not agree, with having people having ownership in the system?
When you say ownership in the system, it doesn't mean, okay.
Yeah, who knows what the fuck comes over that?
That's correct.
Which one has sent you?
KSA.
I can't not believe I've got the magic moment when you're in fucking prison or jail, wherever the fuck it is, in solitary.
Now, there's a funny part to that we missed, which is said.
Go ahead, tell it.
The funny part is what you asked me.
Is there anything funnier than that?
No.
For black humor,
I don't make any black comments. Sorry. You asked me what I was.
All right. On that note, I think I've had my fill of faux profundities, but for folks who made it this far in, Eric, any final words? What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is this, is that when we wonder why people needed to speak to Jeffrey, we could scratch financial acumen off the list. Like, at least we know one reason why people didn't go to Jeffrey, and that was to find out what he knew about the financial crisis or how economics work or finance. I think it goes back to what we said before. He had this ability to get himself into the right places early, and once that happened, he was an expert at just faking it till you make it. He made it, and then he just was able to parlay this over and over again. I don't know if I've seen anything like it. He's kind of like the old J.P. Morgan without without the brain. You know what I'm saying? Like he was the only guy that I could think of in the financial system is, oh God, I sound like Jeffrey Epstein, is a guy like J.P. Morgan, who was integral in everything that was going on with business and finance and politics. And this guy managed to do it. You know, and we're not even getting into the whole pedo thing and everything. We're just talking about what he did and what he does, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just think it's a super interesting clue in the wider story that his supposed expertise, um, he seems to have such a shallow understanding of some of the
Basic.
key moments in history about Wall Street, and you know, without sort of extrapolating beyond what the evidence is, I do think that begs other questions. And
Right.
maybe we don't have the answers yet or never will, but um, certainly, like,
Unknowable, Emily.
I think, you know, many people watching that video, they can kind of intuit that he's kind of full of shit, but I appreciate you being someone who knows this backwards and forwards and can dissect for us play by play just how full of shit he is. I think that's a super valuable public service. So super grateful to you and everyone for watching. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.